Coming up on Network Africa. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma handed themselves over to police to serve 15-month jail term. Ethiopia urges UN to respect African Union-led talks on Nile Dam. Plus, Kenya receives 182,000 AstraZeneca vaccines to boost vaccination program. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma has spent his first night in prison in KwaZulu-Natal after handing himself in to the police on Wednesday night in accordance with an apex court order. South Africa's Constitutional Court had found him guilty of contempt of court last week, ordering him to spend 15 months in jail for refusing to appear before the Commission of Inquiry looking into state capture and corruption. It's the first time a former president has been jailed in post-apartheid South Africa. Former South African President Jacob Zuma turned himself in to police for contempt of court Wednesday night, ending a week-long legal drama over a court order for his arrest. Police had been ordered to arrest Zuma if he did not turn himself in by the end of Wednesday. He had refused to do so earlier this week, striking a defiant tone by launching legal challenges against his arrest. The Constitutional Court sentenced Zuma to 15 months in jail last week after he refused to comply with the corruption inquiry back in February. Zuma denied widespread corruption under his presidency, and hundreds of his supporters, some of them armed, gathered nearby his rural estate to try and prevent his arrest. But in the end, Zuma decided to go quietly, a remarkable turn of events for a revered veteran of the African National Congress Liberation Movement.
There was corruption, you know. I think he deserves it, really.
It's about time. He's been avoiding arrest for years, and it's about time. But I doubt very much if he's sitting in a cell. I would think that he's in the lap of luxury somewhere.
No, I'm not feeling it. Because he's our president, you know. He's ex-president. So if he's arrested, so I'm not happy like that.
Mr. Zuma?
Zuma had previously been jailed by South Africa's white minority rulers for his part in the anti-apartheid movement. The Zondo Commission, an investigation into Zuma launched in 2018, is examining allegations that he allowed businessmen to plunder state resources and traffic influence over government policy. Both Zuma and the businessmen deny any wrongdoing. Zuma also faces a separate court case relating to a $2 billion arms deal in 1999 when he was deputy president, charges which he denies. The former president maintains that he is the victim of a political witch hunt and that Zondo is biased against him. Well, our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now for more. Betty, former President Jacob Zuma, who faces a number of corruption charges, finally finds himself behind bars. You know, this has been a week-long legal drama that has had several twists and turns. The president had seemed defiant earlier in the week, refusing to hand himself over. So what changed?
Well, nothing changed, but we have to note that this jail term has nothing to do with the corruption trial, which is still ongoing. And we understand that he'll be produced, if need be, when the next court date comes along. But this jail term is for contempt of court. And despite the last-minute legal strategy that he brought up, he tried to bring out, that didn't quite work out. You recall that he went to the High Court in Pietermaritzburg asking for a stay of the execution order of his committal. And I remember the Judge Bekisisa Mguni saying, why didn't you take it to the apex court, which is higher than this court, which actually made the order? Advocate Dalimpo, for his legal rep, was citing case laws that will support the issue of jurisdiction, which was the main issue, them taking that the case or the application for stay of execution of a higher court order in that court. And then what scuttled, if I'll put it that way, his chances of using that as a loophole was that Judge Nguni reserved judgment for Friday the 9th. Remember, the deadline for his committal into the prison now was Wednesday. 5 days for him to hand himself over, and 3 days after that for the police to actually effect an arrest. And the police was present shortly before midnight last night. He handed himself to the police, and the police took him in. And we have confirmation from the Justice Minister and all the other officials that he is indeed in there. Even police, there's also the case for the rescission of that decision by the Apex Court, which will be heard at the Apex Court on the 12th. That's Monday. We don't know if anything will change. Probably they'll reduce the sentence. We already know that according to Section 73(6)A of the Correctional Services Act, if he serves a quarter of his sentence, which is in this case about 3 months and 3 weeks, he will be eligible for parole. So maybe the Constitutional Court will stay with the 15 months or probably reduce it and then check out a quarter of that. We'll see. But he is in jail, and unfortunately pictures are already circulating. An official has already been suspended. Pictures of him in the facility. That's the escort facility, a correctional facility in KwaZulu-Natal.
Wow. You know, over the weekend we saw Mr. Zuma's supporters outside his house, many strongly saying they would oppose his arrest. Now that he is behind bars, are there fears of unrest and violence in the country?
Certainly not. The police came prepared yesterday. The crowd had whittled down, and today it's quite quiet outside his home in his Nkandla homestead. A few people, like Carl Niehaus, who is the national spokesperson of the Mkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Association, who has now been suspended by the African National Congress. They gathered outside the court today, a few people, a handful of people, and he was arrested by the police a few minutes after he came here. He spoke to some members of the media. But it's quite quiet outside in Nkandla. A handful of MVA officials, a handful, like a few, and then the crowd is actually gone. At the end of the day, it's a rule of law. It's the law. You don't stare the law in the face and expect, in a regular society, and expect to win. So people learned to respect. I know the ANC addressed the media yesterday where they talked about people being calm and respecting the processes of the law. So a lot of people pulled back, and the investigations are ongoing in KZN, that's KwaZulu-Natal African National Congress, to sanction some of the people who have appeared in such gatherings. Remember, we're experiencing the third wave of COVID, and that's part of the worry as well. So the crowd really whittled down as of today, and even last night.
All right, Betty, very interesting days ahead. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Zuma was once a celebrated political figure, but this isn't his first brush with the law. He was imprisoned for 10 years in 1963 for fighting the racist system of apartheid in South Africa, then went into exile in 1975 to become the spy master of the African National Congress, ANC, before returning to South Africa in 1990 and rising to the presidency in 2009, though by then his reputation had been stained by a range of corruption allegations. While legal practitioner Idemudia Uriesi is also in Johannesburg and has been following the latest legal drama with the former president. Mr. Uriesi, what a night, really. We spoke earlier this week, and you had no doubt in mind that Mr. Zuma would be arrested. But for many, this is a surprising turn of events to see a former president in jail, especially in Africa. It's a huge victory for the rule of law, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I would say it's a huge victory. It might be a surprising event for some Swatis of Africa, but it is quite unusual on our continent. However, I think there is a slight difference in these parts of the continent, and I think one of it is that the rule of law here is sacrosanct. So, for people who have been onlookers, from government officials to attorneys and other professionals, it's not surprising at all. People saw this coming. The courts bent over backwards. The CONCOT bent over backwards. So did the commission. But, Mr. Zuma kept on giving them the middle finger. So it is quite, it was clear to see as far as 3 weeks ago that this is what was going to happen. Yeah, but it is a very strong affirmation for the rule of law. Everything depends on the rule of law. Foreign investment depends on the rule of law. The political economy of the country depends on the rule of law. So, I think the court has sent out an unequivocal message, with regards to the rule of law.
Well, what are Mr. Zuma's next legal steps? What happens next?
He actually has no option but to sit in prison. So you may be aware that the CONCOT sat on an urgent basis as a court of first and last instance. What that means is that he can't appeal. It's the highest court in the land. So his only option is what he's left with. His application at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. Judgment is being handed down on Friday. I don't see it making any difference to proceedings. I don't think it will be different in the CONCOT on Monday as well. So he's looking at serving his term of imprisonment, to be honest.
Well, his supporters had threatened to block any attempt by police to arrest him, but in the end, they didn't have to. The 79-year-old, who has been described as having 9 lives, surrendered. Do you think the former president has finally realized that this is the end of the road and he can't escape the law any more than he already has?
Yeah, well, if he didn't realize it a week ago, I think he realized it this morning when he woke up. It is clear that he had reached the end of the road from the point when it became a legal issue. From the ANC, the NEC of the ANC, other civil organizations, opposition parties at different times tried to speak to him, to see reason and go to the commission and not act in the way that he was doing, but he was having none of that. So ultimately it was going to come to this, and that's where we are now.
Well, all right, then, legal practitioner Idemudia Uriesi. As I was saying to Betty, very interesting days ahead. Thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Thank you.
Well, 2 other stories in East Africa. The Ethiopian government-appointed Tigray Interim Administration has called on the UN and other international partners to condemn what it calls the evil and inhumane acts being carried out by the rebels in the troubled northern region. The pro-government administration was tasked with running the region after a military operation ousted Tigray Liberation Front, TPLF leaders in November 2020. The region was recaptured led by rebels on June the 28th. In a statement, the administration said residents in the towns of Raya, Endata, Mekele and Adigrat, suspected of supporting the government as well as Eritrean refugees, are being targeted. The TPLF has dismissed a ceasefire call by the federal government and issued its own conditions, including an independent investigation into atrocities in the Tigray region. Still to come on the program. Belgium begins returning looted Congolese artworks. That's in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. To the Nile Dam dispute, Ethiopia has called on the UN Security Council to respect the African Union-led negotiations on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, saying the issue does not fall under its mandate. In a statement, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry says the latest attempts made by Sudan and Egypt to take the issue to the UN Peace and Security Council by mobilizing the League of the Arab States would internationalize and securitize the matter. Ethiopia has in the past criticized Sudan and Egypt for seeking to involve mediators outside the EU in the dam talks. The UN Security Council is meeting to discuss tensions over the dam. The World Health Organization chief, Tedros Ghebreyesus, says the world is at a dangerous point in the COVID-19 pandemic as fast-moving variants continue to spread because of an uneven global vaccination effort. He made the comments as the world passed the grim milestone of 4 million recorded COVID-19 fatalities, more than 18 months since the outbreak emerged in China in December 2019. The WHO chief adds that the pandemic's true toll is probably higher.
The world is at a perilous point in this pandemic. We have just passed the tragic milestone of 4 million recorded COVID-19 deaths, which likely underestimates the overall toll. Some countries with high vaccination coverage are now planning to roll out booster shots in the coming months and are dropping public health social measures and relaxing as though the pandemic is already over. However, compounded by fast-moving variants and shocking inequity in vaccination, far too many countries in every region of the world are seeing sharp spikes in cases and hospitalization. This is leading to an acute shortage of oxygen treatments and driving a wave of death in parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Vaccine nationalism, where a handful of nations have taken the lion's share, is morally indefensible and an ineffective public health strategy against a respiratory virus that's mutating quickly and becoming increasingly effective at moving from human to human. At this stage in the pandemic, the fact that millions of health and care workers have still not been vaccinated is abhorrent. Variants are currently winning the race against vaccines because of inequitable vaccine production and distribution, which also threatens the global economic recovery.
Meanwhile, in East Africa, Kenya has received 182,000 AstraZeneca vaccines to boost its vaccination program. The doses were donated by the French government through the global COVAX scheme. Out of the more than 1 million people who have received their first dose, close to 500,000 are fully vaccinated. The vaccination program in the country is still targeting healthcare workers, the elderly, and those with pre-existing conditions. In neighboring Tanzania, a hospital in Mwanza city has reported oxygen shortages as the country records a surge in new coronavirus cases. The officer in charge of Bugandu Hospital, Fabian Masaga, says there has been an increase in the usage of oxygen. He adds that the hospital and the government are making arrangements to increase supply. Away from the COVID-19 pandemic, in the lead-up to celebrations of the 10th anniversary of South Sudan's independence, an achievement made possible by years of struggle by its people, the United Nations mission in South Sudan organized a two-day roundtable discussion with eminent leaders, intellectuals, politicians and young people in the country's capital, Juba. Participants agree that the biggest challenge facing the world's youngest nation is forging a unified national identity.
From Sudan in 2011 after 2 decades of fightings, but by 2013 civil war erupted, leading to an estimated 400,000 deaths and one of the worst refugee crises on the continent. The under-resourced and unevenly interspersed public health services that existed before independence have been further decimated by more conflict and a lack of investment and maintenance. The UN Children's Fund,
spearheaded by United Nations Mission in South Sudan Political Affairs Division, the aim of this two-day dialogue is for the leaders of today to be inspired by the courage, resilience and sacrifice of South Sudanese communities and to take stock of efforts towards nation building as well as draw upon lessons learned, eschew violence and look forward to building durable peace across this young nation.
The greatness of a state is not determined primarily by its territory, population size, or natural resources, but by the sacrifice, hard work, wisdom, and patience of its people. Such is also the case here in South Sudan. The young nation's journey since independence has witnessed triumphs and travails as well as progress and setbacks.
Participants agreed that perhaps the biggest challenge faced by South Sudan at this pivotal point in history is forging a unified national identity despite pervasive subnational violence.
The people that have spent 21 years fighting to become free and to build a country and a nation have recoiled into their ethnic communities.
For their part, government representatives underscored that a nation isn't merely defined by national symbols such as flags, coats of arms, anthems, national days and languages, but more importantly, through deliberate, considered efforts at building a single entity by weaving together diversity to create a common and shared sense of nationhood.
We should consciously, deliberately design this constitution to help us manage our diversity. Help us manage our diversity as a very crucial aspect of creating stability and peace in our country.
The UN mission is currently developing a 3-year strategic vision for peace-building support to this young nation. At the same time, it continues to provide technical assistance and build capacities to government partners in efforts to reconstruct and develop the country following devastating civil wars.
AMIS will continue supporting South Sudan in its efforts to promote peace and security and bring to its people the much expected dividends of peace and independence, especially in relation to challenges in humanitarian assistance, recovery, and development.
The political context in South Sudan remains challenging, marked by an increase in subnational conflict and substantial delays in implementation of the transitional security arrangement. But as Independence Day approaches and leaders begin the process of drafting a permanent constitution paving the way to elections, the hope that every citizen felt on July the 9th, 2011 is palpable once again.
And finally on the program, the Belgian government has said it will begin the process of returning thousands of artworks stolen from Democratic Republic of Congo during colonial rule, following a €66 million overhaul of the African Museum to take a more critical view of Belgium's colonial past. The government is ready to meet the country's call for restitution. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.